Spring training is here, officially 48 hours away from pitchers and catchers reporting to Fort Myers. I'll tell you all you need to know on today's Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, former ESPN social media associate and currently the host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And want to know the best part? It's free, so you might as well not hesitate to check it out because Locked On is your team every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. I'll tell you a little bit more about FanDuel later on today's show, but happy spring training. Pitchers and catchers officially report down in Florida this upcoming Wednesday, February 12th, with the rest of the team expected to join them by next Monday, the 17th. So very, very excited about that. February always marks baseball being here, and I am so excited to have games back on my TV. Now that we are past the Super Bowl, we can officially start focusing on baseball and gearing up for the season. So because of it being spring training time, I am here on today's show to talk all things spring training. Going to be going over the roster of players that the Red Sox have invited to spring training and also discussing some key storylines to look out for as you watch some of these games. Some exciting news here. I will be down at spring training where I will be covering some games and talking about all things that happen down there and covering certain players and their performances. So that'll be a little bit later this month. So stay tuned for that. I am also officially back to 5 days a week now for the show. So I will be providing you with content Monday through Friday, all throughout baseball season here. So heading into spring training now, I think it's still pretty apparent that the Red Sox do have some holes in their roster. And Craig Breslow the other day did mention that they are still trying to add an impact bat before the season starts because they do know that they need that right-handed bat. Now, the likelihood of them doing that prior to spring training is likely slim just because of the fact that the Red Sox start spring training quite literally in a week. So that's most likely not going to happen. But what can happen is that they acquire somebody by opening day, which is kind of what Craig Breslow had indicated, that before opening day, they are trying to add a right-handed bat. But say they don't add somebody, which they kind of need to do, they do have 60 players set to attend spring training. 40-man roster spot guys and also non-roster invitees. So as of right now, say they don't make any more moves and this is what they have, and I'm assuming going into spring training, this is what it's going to be, because even if they don't make a move prior to it, they won't change things around. And if they do make a move prior to it, that person might probably be added to the 40-man roster part of it. But if they do make a move, it could likely be after spring training has already started. So this is where we are at right now in terms of the roster. So for the 40-man roster, for pitchers right now, they have Brayan Bello, who I am really hoping has a good season in 2025. He definitely has shown tons of potential over the last few years of being a pitcher that the Red Sox can really rely on and be somebody who can be something special for this team moving forward. But he did struggle in the first half of 2024, went away from his fastball a lot because that was what Andrew Bailey was trying to preach to the pitchers. That strategy didn't work as well for him, so he started implementing that fastball back into his arsenal a little bit more in the second half of the season, and it allowed for him to really continue to grow as a pitcher, and we saw vast improvement in the second half compared to what we saw from him in the first half. So I'm hoping we get second half Brayan Bello in 2025, a guy who was able to figure out what works works for him and what doesn't, and that he could be a potential superstar in the Red Sox rotation. Then you have Brennan Bernardino, a reliever who struggled in 2024, but had a really good 2023 season as one of the few reliable relievers that the Red Sox could count on consistently out of the pen. I actually spoke with him a little bit at Fenway Fest, and he's eager to get the season started. And he's a guy the Red Sox are going to need to be productive in the bullpen in 2025 because his struggles in 2024 definitely decreased the strength of the bullpen a little bit. Obviously, it's a team effort, but he was a guy who I had penciled in as need a better season from him heading into 2025. Walker Buehler, the guy the Red Sox acquired this offseason on a one-year deal. Now, this is a one-year prove-it deal for Buehler. He needs to pitch well if he wants to guarantee himself a contract for the following season and beyond. There's just no choice that he has but to throw well. He is eager to get out there and perform. There are some risks with Buehler, as we knew, because he has had Tommy John surgery twice. He's a guy who has experienced some ups and downs, but he was absolutely dominant in the Dodgers World Series run this year. So if we can get that version of Walker Buehler heading into this upcoming season, I mean, oh my gosh, he'd be a great addition. And I do think he is somebody who's a little bit of an underrated addition because as long as he's healthy, I do firmly believe we may get not the full dominance that we saw in the playoffs because that was just unbelievably ridiculous how he pitched in the World Series. But if we get a good version of Buehler, he could be a solid number 3 starter in the Red Sox rotation, which could be great for this upcoming year. So I'm excited to see what he can do because he's somebody that the Red Sox are really excited about and is a guy who has had experience with winning and knows what it's like to win, so could help out some of the younger guys in that starting rotation. Another offseason acquisition that the Red Sox had this year was Aroldis Chapman, a guy who they are hoping could be used in a high leverage role out of the pen. I personally am hoping it's not as the closer. They have not made the decision officially on who's going to close games, but I don't think it should be him. But I do think he'd be good in a high leverage 7th or 8th inning type of role where the Red Sox are in a tight game and they need somebody to come in before passing it over to that 9th inning guy. And I think Chapman could be a good fit for that role until he hands the ball off to, say, Justin Slayton, a guy who I feel like could be a good closer, and I'm also going to be discussing on here. But I am curious to see what Aroldis Chapman brings to the table. He is on the older side now and still can hit 100 miles an hour with his fastball, so I'm excited to see if he can provide value out of the Red Sox bullpen in a high leverage capacity. Cutter Crawford. Now, this is an interesting situation because the Red Sox currently have 6 potential starters in their rotation, and Cutter Crawford is one of those guys. And people are wondering, are the Red Sox going to go with a 6-man rotation? Are they going to have all 6 of these guys pitch every 6 days, and then it's going to throw off guys' routines a little bit because they're used to pitching every 5 days? Or are they going to move a guy to the bullpen? And if they move somebody to the bullpen, to me, most likely that is going to be Cutter Crawford because he did have a home run problem in 2024. He gave up lots of home runs and could not consistently pitch well. When he was pitching well, he had really good stuff and he was tough to hit. But the problem is that he wasn't consistent enough for me to feel confident in his performance heading into 2025. He's somebody who, if he is a starter, I picture him being more on the back end of the rotation, which is totally fine because that's all we really need him to be with some of the guys we have towards the top. But the question is, do the Red Sox see him as a better fit out of the pen in shorter term stints, maybe pitching 3 innings out of the bullpen, being a long reliever to eat innings and take away from some of the other guys so that they can rest a little bit more and aren't being overused? Maybe that's the type of capacity that the Red Sox decide to use him in. I think a lot of that is going to play out this spring, but whatever role he's in, I'm looking for some more consistency from Cutter heading into 2025 and limiting the home run ball. Cooper Criswell, a guy who surprised us in 2024, who ended up landing a spot in the Red Sox rotation due to Garrett Whitlock being injured and having to miss the season due to an injury. He was supposed to be in the Red Sox rotation and very early on hurt himself and could no longer pitch. So Cooper Criswell came in and took his spot and pitched pretty well in the rotation. I don't think people knew what to expect. People were a little skeptical for obvious reasons because they hadn't seen him start for the Red Sox before, but he certainly showed up, and he was one of the guys who I penciled in as being pretty consistent for the Red Sox rotation. So he's definitely most likely not going to start in 2025 because the Red Sox already have enough arms for that. So he will be a bullpen piece, but I expect him to be a good bullpen piece because now that he's gotten used to starting, he should be able to pitch more innings at a time. So he could be another good pitcher like I talked about with Cutter Crawford, who could pitch in longer stints out of the bullpen. So we'll see how he contributes in this upcoming season. Garrett Crochet, probably the biggest offseason move the Red Sox made, trading for a guy who truly could be their number one starter. Lots of good stuff from him that the Red Sox like, and they feel like he could be the ace of the future. Lots of things to still figure out in terms of his health because he has had some health problems in the past. But if he's healthy, I think there's no question that he is going to be that number one starter for the foreseeable future for the Red Sox. They have to extend him because you cannot give up the types of prospects that you gave up for him and not extend him. So the Red Sox have to extend him. Presumably sometime during this season that'll happen. Hopefully. Don't really know with this Red Sox team and their hesitancy to give out longer term contracts, but I'm hoping that he's somebody who the Red Sox feel is worth it to extend. And I'm excited to see what he does because he's somebody who I truly feel like can contribute in a very competitive way for the Boston Red Sox. Hunter Dobbins, a pitcher who I actually interviewed on the podcast, is currently in AAA for the Red Sox and has impressed from a pitching standpoint in the minor leagues. When he came on my podcast, he actually raved about the pitching staff as a whole and also the Red Sox pitching system, all the coaches that coach the pitching staff within the organization, and feeling like there are a lot of guys who are helping these players to be set up for success. So there's a chance we could see him called up to the majors this year if he continues to impress in AAA, because he's a guy who the Red Sox are really high on and feel like could be a big contributor. And once he develops a little bit more, he could be a guy that for the long-term future could be part of the Red Sox pitching mold. So we just have to see how he performs in the spring. But he's a guy who we could see come out of the Red Sox bullpen at some point, or even make a couple spot starts this upcoming season, depending on injuries and how he looks in AAA. So I'm excited to see him get his opportunity. The kid works really hard and definitely is deserving of having that opportunity. So lots of pitchers to be excited about. And coming up, I'm going to be continuing to go through the 60-man group of players that the Red Sox have invited to spring training so that you can feel prepared with all you need to know heading into this upcoming week and as the Red Sox start to play spring training games, which is completely very exciting. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get it on than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. FanDuel is great because it truly does allow you the opportunity to win lots of money. I've seen it change people's lives firsthand. So that can 100% be you too if you take advantage of everything that FanDuel has to offer. It is spring training time. I am so excited to get back to seeing baseball on my TV. all the time. And the Red Sox have some fun spring training games, beautiful weather slated for Florida. I am so excited to get down there for a few days at the end of this month and give you some coverage from spring training and talk to some players, ask them about how they're feeling about the season and whether they're ready, and report on who's looking good and who still needs some work before the season starts. But as we go through the players who are going to be in attendance at spring training, there are lots of pitchers that the Red Sox have, including a guy who impressed a lot in 2024 in Richard Fitts, a guy who the Red Sox acquired when they traded Alex Verdugo to the Yankees. He had the opportunity to make a few starts for the Boston Red Sox in 2024 and looked really good in those starts. And he left me wanting to see more of him, wanting to see more of him out on the mound and see him utilize different pitches and continue his success. And he did struggle in his last start of the season, which was in the last week of it. And he was pretty upset about that. But the fact that he was that upset just shows how hungry he is to want to succeed. So I love that attribute. I love a guy who will continue to grind and will show that he actually cares. And that is a huge recipe for success at this level. So I'm excited to see him go out there and battle for a potential rotation spot moving forward. Because like I said, the Red Sox have a lot of options of guys who could start, but we could see him battle his way into the rotation. If somebody is struggling, I'm sure he'd be that next man up that the Red Sox would call to make some starts. So I'm excited to see where that goes with him. And if he is able to pitch really well in spring training, I'm sure the Red Sox will consider giving him a more permanent spot on the opening day roster. Lucas Giolito, a guy who Red Sox fans have been itching to have pitch. I actually saw him at Fenway Fest also, and he was talking about just how eager he is to get out there. He hated that he had to miss all of last season recovering from an injury, and he just wants to go out there and throw. And to me, I'm really excited to see that because he definitely has the mindset of, I want to show Red Sox fans that I am worth them spending the money and investment on me to be here. And I know that I missed my first year with the team, but I'm going to make up for that now. So I'm really excited to see him come in and pitch out of the Red Sox rotation. I don't think he's being talked about enough as a guy who could have a huge bounce back year. We've seen some dominant years of Giolito, and then he went through injury and he hasn't really been that same kind of pitcher that we saw from him earlier on in his career. But if we can get some value and innings out of him, he could be a good back end starter for Boston. So I'm curious to see how that goes. Luis Guerrero, a reliever who the Red Sox called up in 2024, a guy who made some relief appearances towards the end of the season and was really good. I liked a lot of what I saw from him. He's a guy who definitely deserves to get more reps in that bullpen this year, and I think the Red Sox know that and saw that from him. A guy who is hungry and goes out there and gets the job done. And they need guys like that out of the bullpen because they struggled with consistency in the bullpen last year, especially in the second half of the season. And if Guerrero's a guy who can provide some of that consistency in the pen, they definitely should consider throwing him more. Obviously, a small sample size with him because he didn't make that many appearances, but from what I saw, I really, really liked. So I definitely want to see him be able to get that chance to contribute even more in 2025. Another guy who I'm really looking forward to seeing in 2025 is a guy who we've also had to wait a year to see, and that is Liam Hendriks, a guy who has battled back from so many obstacles in his career and has come back to pitch, has been the ultimate comeback player that you think of when you think of a guy who just has experienced so many tough and grueling things and has come back to pitch. And he truly is an inspiration for others, coming back from cancer and battling back to pitch and then getting Tommy John surgery and now coming back and pitching for the Red Sox in 2025. You cannot help but root for this guy. And he is a potential option for the closer role. I'm not saying he can't do it, but I am a little bit skeptical starting off the season with him closing just because he's been away from the game for a long time. I would ease him into that. If you do want to eventually make him the closer, that's fine, but don't have him pitch in that high pressure of a role until he gets himself reacclimated. But I am excited to see what he can provide out of the pen because I do feel like if he's healthy and he's out there throwing, he can provide some value, at least from the standpoint of pitching more than one inning. out of the pen. He spends a lot of time in his career as a closer, not necessarily sure that he's going to be a closer for the Red Sox, but if he is, we at least know he has that experience. But if I'm the Red Sox, I'm giving him some time and easing into that. But whatever role he's in the pen, I know he'll approach it with 100%. So I know he's a guy that the Red Sox are excited to have back. Tanner Houck, the guy who was very clearly the number one starter for the Red Sox in 2024, the guy who the Red Sox could rely on consistently to go out there and get the job done. Yes, he had some bumpy starts in the second half of the season, but I truly believe a lot of that had to do with fatigue because they were stretching him out and he was pitching more innings than the Red Sox we're used to seeing from him, and he hadn't been used to stretching his arm out that much to throw that many innings. But now that he got used to that, I think that's going to work wonders for him heading into 2025. So the Red Sox challenged him, made him reach into that next echelon, that next tier, if you will, of his pitching ability. And I'm excited to see him go into 2025 with that new mindset of I can pitch deeper into games, and hopefully that'll help him to be just a solid number 2 probably starter, assuming Garrett Crochet is the number 1, and that he'll be able to contribute a lot and have some great starts for the Red Sox. Zach Kelly, a guy who struggled out of the pen in 2024. He was used a lot, and I think Alex Cora eventually got to the point where he didn't have a choice because guys were getting hurt and it was tough for him to have to navigate that situation. So Zach Kelly was overused. So I do blame some of it on that, but he's also pretty inconsistent in general. I don't feel super confident with him, but he is a guy who will likely be seen when the score isn't close. If it's a blowout, whether the Red Sox are winning or losing by a lot of runs and they don't need a high leverage guy to come in, he could be a pitcher who comes in those situations. And same with Chris Murphy, who did battle through injury in 2024. So we haven't gotten to see a lot of him as of late, but he definitely had his ups and downs in 2023. So I'm curious to see a bounce back from him heading into 2025. Is he going to be a guy who the Red Sox can rely on out of the pen? Still uncertain on that because we just need to see more of him. Zach Penrod, another young pitcher like Luis Guerrero, who got the opportunity to get called up in 2024 due to injury and looked good out of the pen. Again, a small sample size with him, but he's a guy who was solid and a guy who I'm excited to see heading into this upcoming season, because if he continues to get reps and he can apply that same energy that we saw in 2024, he could be a reliable bullpen piece too. But again, still need to see more from him to really know. And the question is, how much is he going to be used? Luis Perales, another name who's been flashed around among the Red Sox pitching staff as a guy they are really excited about, who could eventually get his call up and eventually could be this upcoming season. A guy who has provided a lot of value at the AAA level and has worked really hard to eventually get that opportunity. So that's another option for the Red Sox, a guy who they could potentially go to come in and throw out of the Red Sox pen, or again, could be used in multiple capacities. So we'll have to see if the Red Sox do use him at the major league level or if they're going to keep him in AAA for now. But either way, he's a pitcher with a lot of talent who's young and has a lot of upside that we can be excited about. Quinn Priester, a guy the Red Sox traded for at the trade deadline in 2024 that they are very excited about and they see a lot of upside with. Let's not forget about him. I don't think we see him in the Red Sox starting rotation in 2025, but he could be a guy that down the road provides a lot of value in the Red Sox rotation because he does have a lot of raw talent and has a lot of pitches in his arsenal that he can utilize. So I think the Red Sox want to see him throw a little bit more, try to get him acclimated to their system and their pitching approach, and then eventually give him the opportunity to pitch in the Red Sox rotation. I don't think that'll be this upcoming season unless, of course, injuries happen and they need guys to get called up, then he could be one of those guys that gets called up. But presumably people are healthy. I see him being in AAA and continuing to develop down there. Patrick Sandoval, a guy the Red Sox acquired this offseason who's missing the first half due to recovering from injury, but he'll be back and is slated to pitch in the second half of the season. Whether the Red Sox use him out of the bullpen or the rotation is still a question mark because, again, of their current kind of 6-man rotation thing that they have going on here. Is he going to be a rotation piece or not? That still is to be determined, but we'll have to see when he comes back how confident the Red Sox are in him pitching multiple innings, or if they're going to put him in the bullpen so that he can at least ease back into things when he comes back from injury. So we'll have to see what happens with him, but hopefully he's a guy who the Red Sox can rely on moving forward. Justin Slayton, who was clearly one of, if not the best Red Sox reliever in 2024, was super reliable, gave the Red Sox a lot of good stuff out of the pen. And he did miss a portion of the season with injury, but he, to me, is the guy who should be closing games because he proved over and over again that he could be a really reliable piece. And opposing hitters had a lot of trouble against him. So I'm really excited to see what he can do this upcoming season. Somebody I'm not as excited to see who has a lot of proving himself to do in 2025 is Greg Weisser, a guy who struggled a lot in 2024, was super inconsistent, did not have the best outings out of the pen. So if he wants to secure his opportunity for the future, he needs to pitch well this upcoming season. He's a guy who I just got really frustrated with during the season because I feel like his stuff is there and he has the ability to be a good pitcher, but he struggled a lot with command in 2024. So I'm hoping that changes heading into this upcoming season. Garrett Whitlock just needs to stay healthy. That's the biggest key to me for him is, can he stay healthy? Can he be a guy who is able to go out there and shove in the bullpen? Because he has nasty stuff. His ability level to be an absolute star is definitely there, but he just has not been able to stay on the field. So I'm looking for him to go out there and be a little bit healthier and more durable, because if he can stay healthy, I have no doubt that he'll be able to be one of the best pitchers on the team. Justin Wilson, another reliever the Red Sox acquired this offseason. I'm a little bit concerned about him. His numbers are iffy, but you never know when a player changes location. They could pitch better. They could pitch worse. It's really hard to say for sure how they're going to adapt, but he's a guy who numbers-wise I'm not overly confident in, but I'm hoping can surprise me and pitch really well out of the Red Sox bullpen. I don't expect him to be used in a lot of high leverage situations, but he is a lefty who helps balance out the pen, so we'll see how that goes with him. And finally, for pitchers, we have Josh Winkowski, a guy who kind of declined a little bit in 2024 compared to what we had seen from him in 2022 and 23. I'm hoping that he improves again and is able to elevate his game a little bit in 2025. I'm not putting him in high leverage situations either, at least to start, until he shows that he can pitch a little bit better. But I am excited to at least see him out there and hopefully see some improvement and growth from him, because we have seen him pitch really well in prior years. Last year just was a little bit inconsistent for him. So we'll see how that goes. And that is the pitching makeup of the Red Sox for spring training as we head to it. And coming up, I'm going to be going over the position players that will be in attendance there. Don't forget you can subscribe to Locked On Red Sox on any podcast platform, including YouTube. Listen to new shows Monday through Friday, where I will be bringing you the latest in all things going on with the Boston Red Sox. You can also check out our other lovely Locked On shows on any podcast platform, including Locked On MLB, where host Paul Sullivan, aka Sully, will keep you up to date on all things going on across the league. So if you want to stay up to date with other Major League Baseball teams, I highly recommend you checking out his show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast right after this. Although I do appreciate you making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every day. Locked On MLB can be your second. Just head to wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe to his show next. And speaking of MLB, it's a great time if you're a baseball fan to start getting hooked again, because spring training is here and the Red Sox have some very talented players to look out for in spring training. Now, from a position player standpoint, they have 3 catchers right now who are invited. Obviously, Connor Wong, who is expected to be the regular starting catcher for the Red Sox, the number one catcher that they rely on to be that guy. He does need to improve defensively, but from an offensive standpoint, we saw him grow in 2024. So I'm hoping that continues into 2025 and that he's able to just be that true leader as a catcher that we need him to be. Then they have Carlos Narvaez and Blake Sabol, both guys who they acquired this offseason that they are hoping can kind of battle it out in spring training for that backup catching role to Connor Wong. And whichever one doesn't land that spot will stay in AAA, presumably, and work with the catchers and pitchers down there. And presumably will be able to go in there and kind of help some of these throwers to elevate their game. But one of these two will be the backup catcher to Connor Wong. It's just a question of who is it. And there's uncertainty there, right? You don't really know what you're going to get from either of these guys. So the Red Sox catching situation is still kind of rocky right now, but I'm hoping that one of these two guys can be durable and reliable as a backup. 5 infielders on the 40-man roster right now: Triston, Casas, Rafael Devers, Vaughn Grissom, David Hamilton, and Trevor Story. All of which I expect to see regular time in the majors in 2025. It's a given, obviously, that Trevor Story is the starting shortstop. Rafael Devers is the starting third baseman. Triston Casas is the starting first baseman. But the question is going to be who's going to play second base. Is it Vaughn Grissom, who has experienced a lot of injury over the course of his time with the Red Sox and hasn't been able to really showcase what he can do? Is it going to be David Hamilton, whose specialty is his speed and was able to steal a lot of bases and put pressure on pitchers for the Red Sox in 2024? Or is it going to be Kristian Campbell, who's a non-roster invite and is being used as an infielder and an outfielder right now? They're going to kind of play around with him and see where he's best fit. But is he going to be the starting second baseman? He is a prospect who has cruised through the Red Sox system at almost an unprecedented level, and we've seen a lot of really good things from him. So I'm intrigued to see how he goes this spring and how he's able to perform, because if he's able to perform well in spring training, then that battle for second base could get really interesting. And that's one of the biggest storylines heading into this spring training is, what is the second base situation going to look like? Who is going to make that appearance every day? And who will be the name on the opening day roster that starts at second base? That'll be interesting to watch out for as the Red Sox continue to navigate through this spring training period. For outfielders, they have Buehler, Abreu, Jarren Duran, Jostinson Garcia, Rob Refsnyder, and Masataka Yoshida. Now, Yoshida most likely is not going to be an outfielder and is going to serve as the everyday DH again, like he did in 2024, because he struggled a lot defensively in 2023. And I don't really think they want to go there again with him and stick him back in the outfield. So I see him as the everyday DH. But Buehler, Abreu, Jarren Duran, and Cedar Rafaela, who is also on the 40-man roster, but is kind of listed as an infielder and outfielder because he can play both. The Red Sox did say they want to have him primarily play in center field, so he likely will be in the outfield to start the season on opening day, along with Buehler, Abreu, and Jarren Duran, both of whom had great seasons in 2024 and provided a lot of value. Both of them provided a ton offensively, and they both had good defenses, as Abreu won a Gold Glove in his rookie season, and Jarren Duran is just such a versatile player that there's just no way to not have him out there. So good, talented young outfield we have here. Plus Rob Refsnyder, who's kind of used as a utility outfielder, a guy who can kind of bounce around and be used in any of the outfield positions if somebody's injured or needs a day off, or if it's a lefty on the mound and they really want to win that game, they'll usually stick Refsnyder in the lineup because he hits really well against lefties. So he's another option in the outfield. Jostinson Garcia, a guy who the Red Sox have on the 40-man roster, but has yet to get his opportunity in the majors. Not really sure if he will have that opportunity right now, just because he's kind of being roadblocked a little bit by the other outfielders that the Red Sox have. But I am curious to see the kind of spring he has and the value he could provide in the future, and if he could be a future of the Red Sox outfield. Then you have Romy Gonzalez, who also was kind of used in a utility role in 2024, but really impressed at the plate, especially as a pinch hitter. He was able to come in and get the job done a lot of the time. We saw him play in the middle infield a little bit. We saw him play at third base a little bit. So I'm excited to see how he can contribute in 2025. Is he a guy who the Red Sox can rely on consistently? I think he deserves a little bit more opportunities and reps in the lineup heading into this upcoming season. Then you have Nick Sogard, who got called up to the majors, again, due to injury in 2024, but we have not seen a lot from yet. It's a small sample size with him too, a guy who definitely could contribute and be a guy who the Red Sox can rely on, because he put together some really nice at-bats when he was up in the majors. So I'm curious to see if he can carry that over into 2025 and contribute at the major league level, or are they going to keep him in AAA? Time will tell, but definitely from what we saw from him in his short stint in the majors in 2024, I saw a lot of positive, good things. So I'm looking forward to seeing him going into 2025 and how he can contribute in whatever capacity they put him in. Now, the Red Sox do have 20 non-roster invitees who are hoping to prove themselves and be players that can show the Red Sox that they can provide value in the future. For pitchers, they have Austin Adams, Isaiah Campbell, Giovanni Cruz, Noah Davis, Michael Fulmer, Brian Mata, Wyatt Mills, Giovanni Moran, Sean Newcomb, Robert Stock, Brian Van Bell, and Jacob Webb. For catchers, Nathan Hickey, Mark Kolosvari, and Sebi Zavala, Marcelo Meyer from the infield, Roman Anthony from the outfield, and then Kristian Campbell, who I talked about, Nate Eaton, and Abraham Toro. So those are the 20 non-roster invitees, guys who the Red Sox feel have potential to make a splash in the spring and could fight for a spot on the opening day roster. So even when I was talking about the catching situation, for example, those 3 catchers I just named, if one of them has a better spring than one of the 40-man roster guys like Carlos Narvaez or Blake Sabol, then maybe we see one of them as the backup catcher. So there are options here. I feel like that's likely to not happen because the reason the Red Sox put the other 2 on the 40-man roster is because they feel confident that one of them will be the backup catcher. But you never know. Crazier things have happened. So we'll have to see what happens with the catching situation. That and the second base situation are the biggest storylines and question marks heading into spring training. And also, how are the injured guys who missed 2024 going to come and bounce back in 2025? Even guys like Trevor Story and Triston Casas, who missed a lot of the season in 2024, but got to play towards the end of it. What kind of season are they going to have in 2025? Is Devers fully healthy? Are some of these prospects going to be able to come up and make a difference? So lots of question marks heading into spring training and big storylines, but I am looking forward to all the action. And I hope you are too, because we are here. It is spring training time, and I am so excited to see what this team can do. So as we look forward to spring training, thank you for tuning in to Locked On Red Sox and making it your first listen of the day. Like I always say, keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I'll catch you on the flip side.